the proper federal agency to investigate aboard the vessel. According to the mayor, he believes that a Coast Guard investigation ordered in New Orleans headquarters is already underway. He believes that federal authorities will make investigation of the circumstances of the original explosion which set off the disaster. Here comes another explosion. The sky. You have just heard it. We are bending down. The sky is like broad daylight. No one knows what it is from where we are. We have all hit the ground. Went up. The sky is still red. We are all hitting the dirt. I hope you can hear me. This is Kaplan, your KTHD news director, with the entire KTHD news staff lying down. Folks are running in the street. Some metal landed within 10 feet of us. Here comes the man now. Have you come from the dock?
All I know, it was a ship that was being pulled away that they told us down there that was loaded with flour, and it was not in any danger of it exploding.
If it contains flour and lumber, well, I'll tell you one thing. Flour and lumber certainly blows, and I'm not trying to be comic at a time like this either.
As the second day wears on, the deputy mayor announces there is no imminent danger of further blasts along the waterfront. We're in good shape now.
This is Bill Guy again. We just finished our water recording. There's a new fire breaking out to the right of where we are. In fact, it's to the southwest of our point, quite a bit in the distance. There are minor explosions now, but nothing like that first blast that we heard a while ago. We're going to try to bring you the latest details just as quick as we can get them. I was just over to the first aid station. Many of the casualties are coming in now. Some of them are minor injuries. Some of them are major injuries. Some of them are dying. We're going to try to keep you up to the latest on the news from Texas City. We're going to leave now. We'll come back with more details a little later on.
You have just listened to a special eyewitness broadcast by KTHT's crew on the scene at Texas City. If you were tuned into the broadcast earlier, at approximately 1:15 a.m., you heard through your radio loudspeaker the concussion blast of a ship blowing up in the harbor as it was being towed away from the dock. We've had several calls to come in reporting that they had felt the explosion in and around the Houston area. The explosion was felt out in the Heights. Also, at the municipal airport, the flame of the blast was seen up as far as 2,000 feet in the air, according to the control tower. And about 15 seconds passed when they felt a shock. A boat was being pulled out of the harbor. It exploded, adding to the casualties. Some 20 casualties had already been brought into the first aid station, badly shaken, and according to the broadcast just concluded, some 55 to 70 more are awaiting evacuation from the dock area. KTHT's news staff is standing by. They have just reported a series of new fires breaking out and minor shocking explosions. We are standing by now to bring you a further report from the KTHT Special Events staff in Texas City. If you are ready now in Texas City, come in.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is Francis Gilbert speaking to you from Texas City again. We break in on this program and come back after a very dramatic and I'm sure a memorable broadcast that we did just a few minutes ago to tell you this. We know that the relatives of the Houston firemen and policemen will be very happy to get this message. We are informed by Lieutenant A.W. Raines of the Houston firemen and policemen will be very happy to get this message. We are informed by Lieutenant A.W. Raines of the Houston Police Department that after thoroughly checking, every fireman and policeman has been accounted for. There are some injuries. There are no deaths among that personnel. Every Houston fireman and policeman has been accounted for. There are no deaths among that personnel. There are some injuries, most of them are, and although there are 2 days at this time to talk to them, to get very much out of them for a broadcast, we know it's the relatives will be very happy to learn this. What is your name, please?
Dick McGlynn.
Dick McGlynn.
That's right.
And what's your capacity down here?
Well, I've been acting on the mortician's works.
In the mortician's ward.
And I was down to dock, and explosion came off, blew me about 15 feet, and they're trying to locate the chief in Goose Creek down there now. They can't seem to locate him anyplace.
I see. Now, were you facing this ship, the blast?
We were just running away from it.
But, so what did you see then from behind?
Well, it looked more like an atomic explosion like we've seen overseas than anything else that I ever seen.
Did you?
It flew up very white and just picked me up and carried me along the ground about 4 feet off the earth, just sailed through the air.
Just a moment, please, ladies and gentlemen. Yes. All right, we have a couple of people here. Come on and take it then. You know what it is. Just a moment, please, ladies and gentlemen. Here is the chaplain.
Good morning. We have here Miss Clay Martin of Houston, Texas, who we interviewed just about an hour ago, and who was on the wharf when this last blast occurred. Mrs. Martin's husband, Clay Martin, a Houston police officer, will be glad to know she is unscathed and has been helping injured Houston firemen and policemen, I should say, and some Galveston and Little York firemen at the first aid station established back at the City Hall. Mrs. Martin, will you tell your radio audience exactly what happened so far as you could tell?
Well, we was asked to evacuate immediately, expecting another explosion. Well, we didn't get out in time. We were hit. I don't know what it was, went up. It was just a big flash. There was steel all over. We had some of the men, their feet torn off, their arms, and it is really a mess down here.
Are there many more down there waiting to be evacuated
Yes.
from the land?
Yes, sir. And we've got this station set up here and all doctors and nurses available, and we're working just like curious. Miss Bird and I have been down all afternoon and all day, right down in the middle of it. And was right at the first aid station when it hit. It blew the truck all to pieces.
Now here's Miss Hallie Bird of Port Arthur, Texas.
Well, it's a pretty bad mess down there. The boys, some of them had their feet and eyes blown out, feet blown off. And there's many more casualties down there. We're all working as hard as we can in the first aid station here, and we don't know just how many dead have been up this last explosion.
There's a Houston auxiliary policeman who's been working down there and has just been interviewed about 50 yards from where we are broadcasting by Marvin Zindler, the well-known Houston merchant. Marvin, would you tell this boy's friends, I think that's C.R. Guggenheimer, just what his condition is?
That's right, Ben. C.R. Guggenheimer, who happens to be 45 years old and is sergeant on the auxiliary police force, works for the Umber Law Company as a gauger, was right in the middle of the blast, as he said. He was standing on the ship dock, on the ship that blew up, actually. He was blown completely just up against the side of the wharf there, which was the only wharf, by the way, that was standing in the whole blast. And he seems to be, he's got his right mind as far as that's concerned. I mean, he's all right, but he's just cut up, and I think that he'll be all right. So evacuating him now to a hospital and giving him plenty of medical treatment.
Let me give you a picture of what is happening at Texas City right now. Just about 1 hour ago, when all of us thought that the worst was over, the city was again shaken by a blast from an exploding ship. The blast occurred on the waterfront while a ship loaded with ammonium nitrate, a ship believed to be the High Flyer, was being towed out into the harbor by tugs. What has happened to the tugs, the men aboard her, no one at this point can tell.
You just heard a report that the second explosion has accounted for some casualties. Several are injured. They're being brought into the first aid station. During the broadcast, you heard the sirens in the background of the ambulances. The doctors and nurses were rushed from a brief record of relaxation back into the mercy treatment.
Now here's Bill Guy, who can give you some more highlights of this last blast that has got us all wondering what will happen next. Bill Guy.
Thanks a lot, Ben. First, ladies and gentlemen, let me tell you again that the Houston policemen and firemen have just just received a report from Lieutenant A.W. Rainey of the Houston Police Department that the Houston Police and Houston found there were no casualties as far as death was concerned in this last explosion. There were some injuries, true enough, but no deaths occurred in the ranks of the Houston Police or Fire Department in this last explosion. At the present time, the clouds seem to be getting a bit lighter over there. The fire is leaping up a little bit higher, and it seems to be spreading out a little bit across the horizon. We can't tell you exactly what is catching on fire or what is being put out because we're too far from the actual scene right now to be able to give you any description of any accuracy.
This is Morgan Beatty in Texas City, standing in the hot sun, watching disaster and relief roll hand in hand across the waterfront and through a stricken town. You can pick up any report you like here, 30 hours after the burning tanker Grand Comp of the French line blew up in the harbor. Any report about the dead, for example, and the missing. Some people say there'll be 1,000 dead when the final count comes in. Others say this must be exaggerated. One Red Cross estimate, far from Texas City, says 700 odd have been counted dead, and another 200 people are missing, 3,000 injured. That is a pretty good guess from where I stand on the scene, but it's nothing more than a guess. Let me explain why. A few thousand yards away are the ruins of the Monsanto chemical plant. On a gigantic parking lot at that plant stand at least 200 parked cars owned by employees who had just begun their day's work when disaster struck on yesterday. Not a single one of those cars is worth anything to anybody except the junk man. They are riddled with bullets of sheared steel, seared by flames, crushed by concussion. How many people did those cars carry to work? Nobody knows. And there's still another parking lot of that kind, almost completely covered with wreckage nearby. It is near there that giant army bulldozers are ceaselessly pushing, backing, and pushing again, rolling aside twisted steel beams, mud, steel plates. Plates crushed the same way that we used to crush tin cans to save the metal in wartime. And down at the high school gymnasium, the crowd stand red-eyed in the sun, waiting their turn, each man and woman waiting patiently to go inside in groups of 10 to identify the dead. All of this should prove that nobody knows how many bodies have been recovered, how many are missing, how many will make up the final total. The first guesses of yesterday, 200, based on the same kind of guessing a farmer does when he says he sees so many hundred bushels in a field of corn. Human suffering and human confusion mingle on the street corner, at the funeral homes, at the mayor's office, all over this sad town. A chap came up to me a few moments ago, and he asked me to help him find his brother. The newspapers said my brother was killed, he moaned. I've seen every newspaper man here, he went on. I looked under 200 blankets at that morgue. I've been everywhere, but I can't find him. This chap's brother may be under the debris I saw them shoving around at the Monsanto company. The only way a final death list can be prepared is through official records of the industrial firms whose plants dotted the waterfront and by a house-to-house check of the homes nearby. That would come later. There's nobody in those homes now. They're either dead, their owners and renters, or they've been evacuated to safer points. That is, all except those the tender-hearted cops at the road barrier slip by so they can hunt for their dead. The damage left by this disaster is estimated at 50 million upward. 8 giant oil tanks have been fired by the explosion of yesterday and last night. 3 have burned out. 2 caved in or have been neutralized by fomite. The first crew has just returned about 50 yards away from us, saying that they've put out another of those tanks. There are at this moment shooting flames 200 feet in the air, however, 3 other tanks, clearly visible against the horizon. Smoke rolls another 700 to 1,000 feet upward as we broadcast. Relief work is so well in hand by now that many volunteers have been relieved by others, but still the fascination and horror hold them like magnets in downtown Texas City. They gather at the mayor's office, heads bandaged, eyes red and glazed, or they're the center of groups still anxious to know how this or that thing happened. And how things happened here in the last 24 hours can hardly be explained in words. You have to see things to understand. You have to see them from one of the Army's splendid transports, as I did this morning at dawn. Liquid styrene billowing plumes of flame into the sky, oil dimming the sun on the seaward side. You have to see the wreckage left when rescuers became victims themselves. I saw an example of this right under a huge barge. A rescuer's boot lay beside the front door of the car. Between the boot and another boot lay a pool of blood as big as a man's sombrero. The front lights still were blinked with red mercy cloth, but the rescuer obviously became a victim of his own bravery when the midnight explosion shook the harbor last night. Besides the Grand Comp, the freighter High Flyer also went up. It also contained ammonium nitrate. And this is Morgan Beatty in Texas City.
voice you hear will be the voice of a brave American city. Speaking for all his townspeople who have so gallantly met the challenge of catastrophe, it's Mayor J.C. Tram of Texas City, coming direct from Texas. Mayor, we salute you.
Thank you, Mr. Cantor. Our first thoughts and our hearts are still turned towards those who've lost brothers, sisters, sons, daughters, mothers, fathers, husbands, wives, and close friends. No doubt you've read many times in the press of the terrific toll and loss of life, the thousands injured, many of whom are still hospitalized, and the devastating amount of property damage. We in Texas City have learned that through the fires of pain and suffering, people are drawn together in fellowship and faith. Faith in a Creator God who alone can sustain the hopes and courage of frail humanity faced with the awfulness of tragedy and death. Yet, we look into the future with that same faith, knowing that the courage and strength that was proven in crisis will be the foundation and cornerstone of a future filled with promise and potentialities. The heart of Texas City is today a great paradox. It is full of sorrow for those who have suffered and are suffering. And yet out of that sorrow and from the bottom of our heart wells up a spontaneous gratitude to our fellow men. For it was you who came to us in our hour of darkness